Hello and welcome back to another episode of the podcast Wild, Wise and Whole. Today I have a wonderful guest. I'm very excited for this conversation. So would you please introduce yourself, Angel, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Lydia. So glad to be here. My name is Angel now. It was previously Beth Hunt, and it still is to a lot of people, of Beth Hunt Holistic Therapies. And I am a guide. I'm a holistic practitioner, and by that I mean I treat people as a whole. And within that, I do a lot of different things. I do sound work, I do touch, I do energy work. So basically working on your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, all parts of everybody's self that comes in to see me. And I just work in a completely bespoke way with every individual because you are unique. And I want to work with you in a unique way to make you shine.
So for those listening, I go to Beth for massages. For Lomi Lomi is like my favorite in the whole world, and I refer to Beth as angels in massage form is what I have said when I'm on the bed getting a Lomi Lomi. So it's so amazing how, which is what we're going to talk about today, but just like how being held and receiving such intimate touch can be so deeply healing. And I think it's something that a lot of people lack and a lot of people are starved of in their lives. And even just when I talk about like the massages and the experiences that I have with you, the way that people look at me is utter confusion. So I really want people to understand how amazing these modalities are and how amazing people like yourself are, like doing this work. So I would love to know from you, like if we open up the conversation around touch, like why is touch so important for people?
Wow.
Big question.
Big question. Let me tell you about a little experiment that was done. So when babies are born, sometimes babies are put into incubators. And there was this series of studies that was done a long time ago now, but some of the babies were given lots of touch and some of the babies were given very little touch, if any. Not a great experiment. I don't condone it, but it happened. But what happened was that the babies who didn't get touch really, really struggled. They got ill, and the babies that were held and cuddled, they thrived. They really thrived. And so touch is so incredibly important to every living being. Touch and sound, actually, but from just a touch perspective, if we're not touched, if we don't get that connection, then we don't thrive. So if you are not getting touch at the moment, then reach out to people. It can be as simple as a hug. It can be as simple as holding someone's hand or just sitting next to someone on the sofa. It doesn't have to be really involved touch. A lot of people don't actually really like touch that much. There are definitely people who don't like touch that much and wouldn't come for a massage, but they might be good with holding somebody's hand. So it's incredibly important just for us to thrive, as I say.
Yeah, I mean, it's super, like, it's that connection piece, isn't it? And it's like super regulating. And I know just from like my experience of being in sessions with you, just how it almost gives me permission to just like fully melt into the present and to just be held, to just like release all of you know, the tension and the stuff that I carry and the responsibility, and then just like receiving that touch from somebody else, and love and touch and present touch is so different to any, even just like a general hug I receive off someone. And I think this is kind of the other thing that I want to discuss with you, because I think people could be listening to this and go, well, I do receive touch. You know, I might hug my partner, or I might, I don't know, like hold someone's hand. But I feel like there's something so different between your everyday touch and embodied present touch,
Oh
intimate
gosh, yeah.
touch. And I think through having sessions with you, I've really learned the difference between that. And then I've been able to bring that into my own life in terms of, you know, how I touch myself, even if it's like putting my moisturizers on or holding my own hands and kind of just being with the sensation of that. So, do you find that a lot of people are disconnected from touch? Not just in the sense of not receiving it.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I mean, we can ask for somebody to give us a hug, but that hug isn't necessarily the kind of hug we want. I
Mm-hmm.
think the disconnect comes, and this is where sound is important and they're interlinked, is when we don't know how to ask for what we want.
Yeah.
Every person that comes into my room, there's levels to this. So the first thing I'm really passionate about is making people feel safe.
Yeah, you're so
So,
good at that.
so safe, loving touch. That's one thing that we need to chat about. And the other thing that we need to chat about is how to ask for what we want. Because a lot of us don't know how to ask or don't know what we want. And even if we did know and how to ask, then the other person doesn't necessarily know how to give it to us. So what I do in my sessions, why you feel so relaxed and able to be in the moment and be present, is because you're asking for exactly what you need and you're getting it. And it's very rare in most of our lives that we actually ask for what we want and we get it exactly as we want it, right?
Yeah.
So it's incredibly empowering. So even to just learn how to ask for a hug in the way that we want it, to be held in exactly the way that we want it, we all need to learn to be teachers. And to learn to be teachers, we need to know what we want to ask in the first place.
Yeah. And how does someone begin to start to know what they need? Because I imagine, I mean, I see this with my work for sure. I imagine you see it as well. But I might say to someone, what do you need in this moment? And they're like, I don't know. Or if we are in a hug, I'll say to clients, you know, I want you to pull away when you feel like you're done in the hug. I'm not going to leave this embrace. Like, I want you to. And Matt taught me that. Sometimes in sessions with Matt, I'm there for a good 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm getting everything I need from this embrace. And that's even being so nice to just be in spaces where I can be held and not feel like, oh, I need to rush, or oh, it's been a bit too long now, I need to pull back. And it almost just allows you to just really sink into what you're receiving. So for you, do you see people who don't know what they need? And if they don't, how can somebody start to become attuned to that, to asking for what they need?
Absolutely. So one of the modalities that I trained in is called Four Elements Healing, Four Elements Therapy. And in Four Elements Therapy, we learn that every layer of us, we split every layer of us into a number, if you like. So say your skin is 1 to 10, your muscles are 1 to 10, your whole body is 1 to 10, right? So when people come in, like 1 is just a very light touch, whereas 10 is like my entire body weight on somebody.
Interesting.
Okay, so that's a full body gravity kind of touch. But then there's asking for what speed, which a lot of people don't talk about as well. So do you want touch that is very still or very slow? Or do you want touch that is more kind of mid-range? Or do you want really fast touch? You know, do you want a hug that's quite tight, or do you want a really like slow hug where you really just squeeze in and hold somebody, you know? So we need to learn these very simple things for a start. What speed do you like things at in that moment? Because it changes all the time, as we change all the time. Now, all of this is about inner wisdom. This is about your tapping into your own inner knowing, which is something else in itself, you know, and something I'm running a course in soon. But it's about your own inner guidance. What does it tell you? And trusting that. So a very simple way to start with that is to breathe. So let's do it now. So me and you, we're just going to take 3 deep breaths. Going to breathe in and out. And then again and out. And anybody listening, join in and breathe in. And breathe out.
Oh, I feel like I've really landed.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. So the first thing is you land. The second thing is you're now in a space of awareness with yourself because you've landed. So you can say to yourself, if 10 is fast and 1 is completely still, what number am I at today? And so the first number that comes into my head is 5. What's the first number that comes into your head?
About a 5, yeah.
About a 5. Oh, that's handy because we're talking to each other. So we're both in a medium flow in this moment, which is great. We're both congruent with each other, which is super. So yeah, anybody out there, if you're like a number 1, you might want to lie down to listen to this, you know, be really still and just take it all in. If you're a number 10 right now, then maybe this isn't the time to listen in, or maybe you want to put some iPods in your ears and go for a walk while you listen, you know, to get yourself up to a 10. But it's listening to that and then following through.
Yeah, it's also really interesting as well because when I feel into my body, so like just for example, for people who are listening, if I was in a session with you now, I feel like I would want lots of warmth because I notice that like I feel a little bit cold in my body. I notice that I would like focus again on my pelvis and like my lower back. I've transitioned into inner autumn and I feel like it just kind of made my pelvis a little bit off kilter, so I can notice that. And then also I feel like I would want quite firm but loving touch. So I think that's an example of like when you tune into your body, you then can communicate the different things in terms of how, like you've just said, how you want a massage to be. And just even noticing that and then communicating that, it's like, wow, how much more tailored is that touch? How much more safe are you going to feel in that experience because your body is getting what it needs? And how much more are you just going to receive from that massage? Because I think the other thing as well is like, we can do these practices with the intention of it being relaxing. But if someone comes into a massage and let's say they're like 10 in their sympathetic, like they're stressed out, they whip their clothes off really quick because they feel uncomfortable with that whole process. They lie on the bed and then touch just automatically starts. It's like, wow, like that feels like totally different experience actually. Or even if someone comes in and they're quite shut down and they get on the bed, and then I have a client who I'm thinking of in particular, and she's noticed through the work that we do that she actually zones out through massage, and she's never noticed that before. To the point where she can't feel the touch of the actual massage. So she's going there with the intention for it to be relaxing, and she's realised she's not even present on the massage bed. So all of these things I think are just so important for the conversation around safe touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it is such a big subject, and it's interesting you saying that, because yeah, I've experienced all types of people come in the door in all sorts of different situations. And it's funny, years and years ago, I did a little part-time job as a claims broker, for a little while. I was the person who answered the phone when people had had a trauma, oh, I've crashed my car, and it's amazing how you do these random jobs, isn't it, to help you become who you are later on in life. And so it's interesting when people come in and they're, like you say, their nervous system is very heightened or disconnected. For example, if we take those two ends of the example, then you have to respond in very different ways.
Yeah.
And I'm very lucky, because I'm kind of have this sort of chameleon aspect to myself, where I can help mirror people and then draw them into what they need to be. That is part of a skill that I have, which is great. So if somebody comes in and they're very heightened and they're very stressed out, we might spend a lot longer talking and just bringing them down, calming them, and really talking about what might make them feel safe. Or if they don't know that, then we'll talk about things that bring them joy, things that bring them love, because that always makes people feel safer. And equally, if somebody comes in and they're disconnected, then they might not know what's going on in their body, or what they want, but I can get them onto the table, and I can bring them into their present self as they are, and draw their attention to my hands, or to the room, or to the music, and get them to choose music, and get them to experience pressure and connect with what the feeling is as I actually touch them, and then talk to them and keep them in the present with me whilst I do the touch. And that brings people to connection as well. And then they start to notice what's going on, and they can bring their presence to different parts of their body, and therefore reconnect.
And this is why it's not just a massage.
No, it's not just a massage.
Like, it's not. Um, and I think there's people don't know about this work. So I think when people say to me, like, oh, well, what is it? Because I always describe it as body work, or I'll say Lomi Lomi, and I'm like, it's like therapy in touch form.
Yeah.
And it's not just when you go to a spa and you get a neck, back, and shoulder, and it's some, lovely girl who's been there for hours just kind of doing the appointment. It's not that. It's like, it's so tailored and it's so special. So, do you feel like for you, what you do does that resonate, like therapy in touch form?
That's certainly part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. I mean, not everybody has touch. That's the thing. Sometimes I do quantum regression integration therapy with people. So that doesn't necessarily involve touch. That's kind of that's type of hypnosis. But more often than not, people really, really do come for the touch, I guess. And I have a lot of clair abilities. I tune into a lot of clairaudience, clair vision, clair, like all of them essentially. And so what happens when I touch people is I get feedback from them. So there's two parts to what I do. There's the you coming in and you asking, and me encouraging you to ask for what you want.
Yeah.
And then there's a percentage of the treatment where I'm just touch the person and I feel what they need as well. And part of that could be that, say you were drawn to your pelvis, you said before. So say we work on your pelvis, and there could be a sound in your pelvis, and I can hear this sound, and I'm like, Lydia, would you like to make a sound? We'll make this sound together, and we draw that out of your body in that way. Or it could be like sometimes I have very strong visions of what comes across in people. So I might say touch somebody's shoulder, and I'll be like, oh, I can see a lion's head there. What does that mean for you? What does a lion's head mean to you? And they might say, oh, protection, or they might say it's a warning or whatever. And then I might work in a hypnosis session around that, and so whilst I'm touching them, I'm talking them through releasing this tiger, or releasing the sound, or releasing the movement. Sometimes people want to move as I touch them. I'm like, I can feel that this needs stretching. Does that feel good? Yes. So then we'll stretch out that part of the body. And again, it's bringing lots of different types of awareness to people. But it's all encapsulated in the energy, essentially, because we're energy. And when I touch people, I'm not touching just your physical form. I am touching you energetically. So we are becoming energetically combined for a short time, in the most safe and beautiful way. And so as I tune into you, I tune into your soul, I guess, on a
Like do. It's so well, that visual I know from our sessions when we had the TDT, the
trauma discharge
trauma
therapy.
discharge therapy, when we done that session, and
Yeah.
the visuals in the glutes around like the little guard dogs.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Throughout the session, you were asking me to like speak to them and connect to them,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
that was like a really amazing experience because there was a lot of holding and tension in that part of my body. So for you to kind of bring that in a way that felt like it wasn't overwhelming or distressing, to connect to the reason why that was happening and create this visual of like these little guard dogs, and then we were speaking to it and it just really helped release stuff from the tissues, was like, it was amazing. It was so great and it was so fun. And I think that's the other thing that people aren't really aware of, or they don't really understand, is how much we do store, like, one, energetically in our bodies, but two, also like in our tissues and in our fascia. And clients will say to me, yeah, I've read, like, I've heard that body keeps the score, or I've read body keeps the score, but then they'll be like, so stuff is like actually in your body. And I'm like, yes, stuff is in your body. So can you speak a little bit about that to people, and just kind of, if they don't know anything about that, like, what would you say to them?
Mm. So I guess I'd talk about trauma.
Mm.
No. And trauma can be what we call big T trauma, which is the one most people know about, which is like assault and abuse, and these really big experiences, grief, but pretty much everybody, even if they haven't had a big T trauma, they've had little T trauma. So little T trauma can be, say, constant nagging in the workplace, for example, a bad environment at home. But it doesn't have to be abusive. It can just be constant bickering, or pressure, undue pressure, stress that we're under all the time. And what happens to us when we have this little T trauma, well, any trauma, for example, is our resilience gets lower and lower and lower. And by resilience, I don't mean our strength, our physical resilience. I mean our emotional resilience. And I'm sure you've talked about this in other podcasts, Lydia. So I've lost track of the question.
About stuff being stored in the body.
Yeah, thank you. So when your resilience is low, or when you've had these constant traumas, these emotional experiences, we pull them into our bodies in different ways quite often, because it's a way of dealing with it. So one of my colleagues always says, we carry all our monkeys on our shoulders, for example. We call them all different monkeys, these different things that we're carrying around. And he had this theory that a lot of people put their monkeys like here,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's why we all have like neck, back, and shoulder issues, because we put them somewhere where we can't see them, because then we don't have to deal with them. I think it's so true.
oh my God, that's great.
You
Yeah.
know, anywhere on your back, you can't see it. So,
Yeah,
why does everybody come for back massage? Because we hide everything there,
for sure.
where you can't see it, where you don't have to deal with it. But the thing is, if we don't deal with these things, then we start to really struggle. They really mount up, and our body's resilience also gets very low. We start to get tired. We start to or not be able to sleep. We get very emotional, can't focus. And so when we have touch, when we release these things out of our body, then we can sigh, we can be freer, we can sleep better, because we're not just holding things on an emotional level that is separate from us. The emotional and the physical and the mental, and it's all one.
Yeah.
They can't be separated. So you let that memory go, that trauma, you work with that trauma, then your body can let it go too. And when we resolve it on all levels, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, if needs be, then it really goes, and then you really feel the difference.
Yeah, that's so like it's just profound, isn't it? And it's just like these are the things that I think like the everyday woman or person really needs like the access to, because I think when they do have conversations like this to listen to, like it opens up so many different options. And it's like, I think for me it was one of the reasons why I saw the rapid kind of healing that I did. And I didn't push or I didn't force last year at all. But I think because I was held on so many different levels, I was doing the work with Matt, I was coming to have massages. And without realizing it, I was being held on, like you've just said, that wholeness of me in the aftermath of everything that I experienced was being held, and every part of me was having permission to land somewhere and to just be authentic in how I was showing up. Um,
Mm.
and I think that's really like, I think that's beautiful. And I think that's something that people don't have access to, is to just land and be authentic. Um, and just have permission to be in the thing that they're experiencing. Because I know for me, in one of our massages, there was one in particular, but it was quite a difficult massage. Like the stuff that was coming up in the pelvis, it was very active. I think now, upon hindsight, Beth, Angel, that was the beginning of my Kundalini awakening,
Mm-hmm.
because the amount of energy that was moving
Mm-hmm.
through my body, and it was I remember it was very intense.
Mm.
Um, and, sometimes you can have certain sessions where you feel really held and you feel really nourished, but like stuff is coming up that's in the body that's like hard to sit with and to be with. Um,
Yeah.
and what would you say to anyone, like a client of yours who maybe is a bit apprehensive about bringing the body based, the touch and the stuff that we spoke about so far into their healing work?
I think you put it really well, in that it's just really important that it's a safe space.
Yeah,
If you're going to bring in touch, you need to be safe and to feel that you can be authentic in that space, as you say. That's incredibly important. If you don't feel that you can be yourself with that person, then you're not with the right person. Whoever you go and have touch with, if they're disconnected from you, how can you even be connected to yourself?
yeah,
you know so find a person that makes you feel safe.
yeah.
And as you say, like anything can come up, like with the Kundalini stuff. You know, I quite often work in a very sensual way with people when that's what they need.
Yeah.
I do a whole spectrum, so people can wear as many clothes as they want. I can massage over clothes, I can do touch work over clothes.
Yeah.
So you don't need to necessarily take everything off, which is a misconception around touch, I think. And I've worked with people who have had sexual abuse, and we have worked over clothes to begin with, or I've done even off body work with energy, and then we work very, very slowly up to what they can handle before we even get undressed, you know. But then there's the other end of the spectrum where people are moving into that really sensual part of themselves, and we don't talk about that either. These two taboo subjects either end, where the sensuality and the sexuality of us is such a huge part of who we are.
Yeah.
And touch really is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
And so particularly with Lomi Lomi, you and I have talked about this a few times before. So Lomi Lomi is a sensual treatment.
It's the most incredible treatment I've ever had.
Yeah, it is the king or queen in my eyes. The queen of all touch therapies, because it's not just touch. It does bring everything. It has sound, it has energy, it has spirituality, it has touch, it's on such a deep level, and it's very embodied, it's very feely touchy on so many levels, and
Phenomenal.
incredibly sensual. And people can get embarrassed about that. People can get embarrassed about the fact that they've felt sensual.
So I did when I had a Lomi Lomi with you, and I remember it was like one of the first ones that I had, or like second maybe, and you activated the sexual energy in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, when I get Lomi Lomi, for all our massages, I just like take my kits off, so we're gabbing and I'm like fully naked, and then you get on the bed. But obviously, not everyone has to do that. And it's the way the touch, like I can't describe it, but it's like every single part of your body feels held at once. And because you do like the dual touch where you'll come underneath and then you're kind of guiding over it, like it's so beautiful. And I remember you activated that energy, and I was like, oh, I feel so awkward and embarrassed. And you didn't know, or maybe knowing you probably did know because you're just like so in tune. But you on outwardly on the surface, you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking like, oh, this is really awkward because like I'm so like turned on in this moment. And then I remember I just had this moment after about like a minute or two of the narrative coming in. And I was like, well, it's just energy. And
Mm-hmm.
then I just softened into it, and that energy just moved through my body. And that was massive for me because it's the first time I've ever felt that charge being taken away and that shame being taken away at being in my sexual energy around a practitioner, which then obviously was massive for my work with Matt, which has then been massive for kind of me holding that energy in client work when it comes up for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like, it's so important for us to normalize the sexual energy when we are doing body-based work, because I was saying this to my friend the other day. I personally believe now I'm tapped into sexual energy. All of the modalities essentially are working with sexual energy. They're just naming it a different name, but essentially the essence of it is life force, is our sexual energy. And she was like, "Oh my God, yeah, I've never thought of that." But I just feel like that's what we're working with.
Yeah, I think there's so many different energies. There are so many different energies,
Wow.
and sexual energy is definitely a huge one for most humans. No, the way I work is I feel very subtle energies. That's part of who I am, and I've been tuned in since I was very young. Um, but I'm trained in lots of different energy therapies. So Seshem, for example, is quite feminine energy. It's the balance of the masculine and feminine. So that too can be very sensual. They can all be sensual. But it's also star energy, solar energy, so it can make people feel very lifted, and ascendant, and then there's Reiki. So Reiki translates as universal energy, and it's very, very gentle, and very nurturing, and holds people in love again. And it can be sensual again, but it's, in my experience, generally not as unlocking as like working with the Kundalini or working with the Sejam energy, for example. It's what your intention is. It's what your intention is, even if it's a subconscious intention. When you come in, it's something that you wanted to work with. So perhaps that came up for you because that was on some level an intention that you wanted to gain more control over that. It's really fascinating. I really love when I'm doing, say, Lomi Lomi in particular, because it's so physical as well as energetic, because it holds people on essentially a 4D level. Like you said, you were under the body, you were over the body. My hands are doing different things at different times. It's like being massaged by an octopus, somebody once said.
You're like,
Doesn't
how is
really
she at
sell
my
it, but
shoulders and my foot at the same time?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's so easy for her.
Just ambidextrous. That's me, and many, many levels. But yeah, it's being able to hold somebody fully, and almost lift them and stretch them, and undulate them. It's sexy. It can't help but be sexy for some people. So I always have to have this conversation with people before I start with Lomi Lomi and explain that it is sensual. There is a whole boundary thing that you have to put in place with that on a client relationship. And so I often speak into that and make people aware that it's totally fine to feel that. It's great to feel that, but this is not time to be sexual with me or themselves. It's about tuning that energy, like you did, back into your body. If somebody gets aroused, then great, but use that energy to heal yourself. Bring that back in. See where you can go with that in your body. Can you take that, up to your mind, up to your crown? Can you really tap in to messages that come through with that? It's a really beautiful thing and nothing to be ashamed of. We all need to speak into these things.
Yeah, I love it. And I just think it's like, I think there's something so special about like your whole body receiving support, because I think it's just interesting, like thematically, when you explore these topics of like even support. And I'm thinking of one client session I had in particular the other day, and she was just so exhausted of holding everything. And I was just like, lay back on the bed for me and just really receive that support. And as soon as she did, and I was like, really noticed that, she was like, wow, like I never feel like I'm just held. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
so hard for me to feel that. So I think there's something as well, like somatically, to receive being held and receive that support is just so deeply healing, because so many of us are holding so much. So for someone, I personally find with Lomi Lomi, for my body to almost feel weightless and for me to just completely relax and not have to think about, like, it takes you into your body so much, Lomi Lomi, and you will move my limbs and you will pick things up, and you know, you invite me to be completely weightless on the bed. And I think that in itself is just that like 90-minute, 2 hour experience of me not having to hold anything.
Mm.
Gosh, I imagine like that's so few and far between for people,
Mm. Being
especially
given
women.
permission. Mm. Being given permission to let go. And I do that with all treatments. It's particularly noticeable, I think, in Lomi Lomi, because you're being stretched and moved around. But in all treatments, you quite often, there is a slight disconnect with ones where people keep underwear on, say, and they have a blanket on, and I'm just working on their back, and then I'm working on a leg, and then another leg, and then an arm, and there's a natural disconnect. But even within that, if I'm working on somebody's arm and they hold it, they give it me, and then I take my hand away and it's still stuck there, I'm like, okay, relaxed,
Yeah.
like, and just to have somebody just come and just gently put your hand underneath and say, I've got this.
Yeah.
You don't have to hold that anymore. Pretend like you're on a sofa at home. Let your arm just go. It can be really, just that can be really massive for people, as you say, to have permission to let go
Yeah.
for once, to really just let somebody else hold the weight, hold the support.
Yeah. And I think there's two really like little nice techniques that people could play around with there. So like the support from the bed, you could kind of lean against that, tune into your breath, notice how it feels, notice on like a deeper level where you're still almost like gripping. Because I think initially you might relax, but then once you become more attuned, you can notice like those deeper layers that are still almost like tight gripping. So it's just allowing yourself to relax into that. And then the other one, which is really nice, is just even hold on your own arm.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a nice technique to just get you used to receiving support and almost like you've just said, becoming relaxed on that deeper level. And I think one of the things that we've spoke about, and it's come up a couple of times, but I just want to circle back to it, is like this consensual touch, because I think also people aren't aware that they can go into massages or come into bodywork or touch and be like, at the moment, I just want to keep my clothes on. Like that level of consent and autonomy is fucking huge for people. And I really want people to know that they can do that, and then they can go on. That in itself is a process, right? From like, I'm going to keep my clothes on to now I feel comfortable enough to expose like my legs. And people don't feel like, I think people don't think they have the autonomy to be able to do that, or it even pops into their head to mention that in a massage or touch.
Mm. I know. It's funny, isn't it?
Mm.
Really, because outside the therapy room, if I was to meet you in the street, I wouldn't be like, come on, let's take our clothes off and have a hug, would I? Well, I might,
Well,
because I'm
mate,
me,
depends where you
but
are. That's
generally
asking.
speaking,
If it's me, you, and Matt, we'd be like, okay, just
yeah,
drink some
so
cacao.
yeah, the big moody hug, why not? But yeah, absolutely, you can ask for that. Any massage therapist or body worker, I would rather say, I think, because massage for people tends to mean like this movement as well. And actually, touch isn't all about that kind of strokiness, that flow. Massage, like I mentioned before, is about the layers. So
Yeah,
sometimes it can be really still work and just, we call it sponging. So it can just be like falling into somebody and then very gently coming out again. And the coming out is just as important as the falling in. If you don't have that gentle sense of somebody leaving, it can be quite shocking, to be like sponge all the way in and then be like off. It's
yeah,
like, whoa, to your system. But if you come in really, really gently and then you come out really, really gently, then the whole body just goes, oh, thanks,
yeah.
That's so gorgeous. And you don't need clothes on or off. You can have it however you want.
Yeah.
That is, and something you can play with at home. Again, another thing, just practicing holding your hands and then coming out slowly, or doing it on your face is really beautiful, like sponging your face, just, or your arm or someone else's arm, or is such a beautiful technique to play with. Imagine, I always say this, like, imagine kissing somebody where you slowly sink into their lips and then come away again. How sexy is that?
That's super sexy. And that's interesting that you said about the kiss, because I just thought in my mind then, like, imagine even during like intimacy and sex, we saw touch as almost like foreplay. And like we imagine we were taught that touch is a way to open up the yes please in our bodies, because touch is so, that in itself is such a process. Like, I got sponging from Matt and also from you've mentioned it, and it's something I consciously will try to bring into sessions with clients. And that process of saying to them, like, I want you to tell me when you become aware of the presence of my hand. And at first they look at me and I'm like, just close your eyes and let's just like embody this and try it with me. And for some people, my hand could literally be like far, really far away from the body. It could be really close. But the instant they go now, I'm like, you see how, like, how much your body receives touch before my hand even lands on it. And I
Exactly.
think that is like, our bodies are so attuned to touch. And I think a lot of intimate touch is hard and fast. Well, for the average day person, it's like, I'm going to touch you and then instantly I'm going to do the thing, or I'm going to touch you because I want it to lead to us having sex. And I just think there's so much intimacy and just like love and foreplay that gets to come with sponging and slow touch. And I think we can do that with ourselves as well. I think women as well are like really disconnected from intimate self-touch.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, wow, you touched on so many things there.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
So yeah, going back, yeah, firstly, there, you know, conscious touch is where we begin,
Yeah.
with ourselves, like conscious touch with ourselves. As we said at the beginning, like, what do you like? Never mind what your partner likes or what your friends like. What do you like? If I gave you 3 different plates of poached eggs, scrambled eggs, fried eggs, or you could choose, which one you really like. So which touch do you like? And start with that on yourself. And then, like, this idea of almost this spectrum of touch leading up to sex, everybody needs that spectrum. It is not gendered.
Mm.
I think we're taught to believe that men just want to get to the end game, and I don't believe that that is true at all.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of the touch before you even touch somebody. We are, as conscious beings, which is what we are, whenever we meet, we create an energy between us. We all have an electromagnetic field that comes from our hearts all the time. It's scientifically proven. You are pumping an electromagnetic field all the time. And so, say, when you and I meet, we are within each other's fields already. We're already touching on that level. We're already communicating. And if you come in and say you're feeling really sad, then I will sense that on a level. Even if you're like, hey, I'm completely fine, I will know
Yeah.
you're not. And we all have that. You can go into a room where there's been an argument and you know about it when you've walked in that room, even if they're not there anymore. You really sense that, in the same way that if you go into a meditation space where people regularly hold beautiful, calm space. You feel that too, right?
Yeah.
So creating a space like that for yourself in your home where you hold stillness or sensuality or beauty, or like this room I'm in, although it's not decorated and stuff, as you can see, but this is where I do my sound therapy very often. And so this room is super calm because it has this resonance of sound healing that I constantly create in the space. So yeah, when we exchange energy before we even touch, that's a big piece that a lot of us are missing. And then we introduce touch. So this is where permissions and things come into it. The wheel of consent is a really great place to start for anybody who's not come across it before, learning what it is to take, what it is to give, what it is to receive. It's massive. Understanding those boundaries. And then you introduce touch into this. Everybody knows what they want, everybody knows what they need.
Oh, so
you can voice that, you can give that to each other. As you move with each other, you can then respond to that and say, is this still okay? Is this still the touch that you want? Or because I just did that stroke, do you now want something deeper? How does that feel to you? We really miss this vocal piece in humanity of just going, that was great.
yeah.
Oh, I really loved the way that you just kissed me then. That was incredible. I really loved the way that you just stroked my hair out of my face. I really love that. Please do that again. Why? It's so crazy, isn't it? And we're afraid of people saying what? If you gave them a compliment and said, I really love the way you brushed my hair out on my face, why are you afraid of saying that? No, that is not a bad thing. That person might go, oh, great. Now I know that's something they really love.
Yeah.
Equally, if somebody like grabbed you really hard or something, which they thought was like a nice massagey, squishy thing, and you might go, actually, that's not so great for me. That was a bit too hard, and then they know to back off and do it more gently. And then again, you're going, oh, well, that's great. I really love that.
Yeah.
They'll go, great, I'll do that more.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
It's like when you say it out loud, it's like, well, of course, but we know that
Yeah.
so many people literally would rather like combust into flames than to say that feels uncomfortable. Because it's hard for
Totally.
people to like communicate what they need. So people would
Mm.
rather like be in a situation using like bodywork, for example, and it not be comfortable, but endure that. And I think it says so. I think these patterns that we have as human beings and our like protective mechanisms really also come into play with bodywork and receiving touch and all of these different things, because it's like I know so many of my clients would sit there and endure rather than communicate because it just feels so uncomfortable. And like this is
Mm.
one of the reasons why I'm personally being drawn into like going to getting into the tantra space and stuff, because I think for me, where I'm at now, like it feels so important and expansive for me to be in a situation where I can learn to communicate what I need and what I want and vocalize that, and also for people to do that back at me, because I think that's so powerful. And I've had tasters of that with like you and Matt, so I've had that in these like really healing spaces, but then I think to take that outside of those spaces and just like be around men and women and just be like, this is what I want and what I need. And that could literally for me be like, I love tickly on my arm. Like it's the nicest thing ever. I'm sure you give me tickly in a session, but I love tickly on my arm. And just for me to go up to somebody and be like, can I have 5 minutes of tickly? And there be no expectation on the other side of that. Like fucking hell, that would be so healing for me and so empowering. And I think this, like what you said, there's so much as well in, and you can play around with this if you have a partner. Like receiving touch and asking what you want and what you need without an expectation attached to it, I think would just be lovely and just so like connecting and wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. There's I had a session with somebody, and they called it a bossy massage, right? So a bossy massage is when you say, I want you to touch my lower back. I want you to say, squash it. And then I want you to rub it. And then I want you to maybe roll it. And, as they do it, they're going, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this what you wanted? Is this okay? And it's a very simple thing. But just first of all, you tune in and you like, where have I got an ache, for example? Because we can all resonate with perhaps an ache or a pain. So where have I got something? Okay, so say right now I have the back of my right leg is hurting. And then I think, okay, what would make that feel good? Oh, I'd like somebody to squeeze it. That would feel good to me. So you get somebody to squeeze it, and then you go, oh, how hard do you want me to squeeze it? And does that feel good? And just this very simple dialogue building up around something non-sexual can then lead into us asking for things when it's in a more sexual situation.
Yeah.
On the same, like you said, when people come in for body work with me, learning how to tap into what you need and want and speak it then means that when they go out into the world, they have more of a chance of being able to do that because they've done it in a safe environment.
Yeah.
you know it's practice. It's just practice.
Yeah, it
And
is.
I've been there, believe me. I spent 10, probably longer. How old am I? I'm 47 now. I've spent most of my life probably not knowing how to ask. And it took me a long time to get the hang of it, but I'm getting much better at it now. And I've had trauma. I've had sexual trauma, and that's why I struggled. So for those people that have had sexual trauma, I get it, and it can be real tough.
Yeah.
But you can come out of it.
Mm.
You can
Yeah,
heal.
sure. I think you're like literally an embodiment of that as well because you're so like just in your body and in your power. And it's so nice to be like, as a woman who's also experienced sexual trauma, to meet somebody who, like you, is like, even that is just lovely for my body as well. And I think as well, like, if you're someone who has had boundaries kind of violated or has been in a relationship or a connection with, I don't know, a parent or whatever, and you've been made to feel like, well, it's too much what you asked for, or you shouldn't ask for that. I think even these practices, oh God, it's just like, it's so profoundly healing for all parts of you to be in a space where someone is like, it's not too much what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's okay and you can receive that. And I think even just showing up and having that space, even if it's for like a year, 2 years, it's like you said, it's huge on the outside because you learn to advocate for yourself and speak your truth. And then you also learn that what you're asking for is not too much. And
Mm-hmm.
that is like, that's multiple permission slips for you as a human being as well. So this work is really, really profound. And I'm so
Mm.
glad that you come on the podcast. I was like,
I love
does Beth do podcast episodes? Like, I don't know, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
I love how we're both like massaging ourselves now as well.
Yeah.
Like I notice you like under there.
No,
I'm like doing my leg.
I know. I know. I'm very hopeful I can get in with you on Thursday, actually. I'm going to look at my diary because now we've been speaking about it. Like, I knew I needed an appointment, but even more so now, I'm like, I need my Lomi Lomi fix. It's been a while. Thank you so much for coming on, Beth. Last question I would
So,
love to ask you is, what does it mean for you to be wild, wise, and whole?
oh gosh.
Mm.
Be wild for me means to be authentic, in my true authenticity. To be wise means to listen and be listened to.
Nice.
And to be whole is to love myself as much as I love everyone else. Because I find it so easy to love everyone. And it's taken me a long time to love me, but I do.
But thank you so much. And where can people find you and how can they work with you?
Oh, well, you can email me on info@bethhunt.co.uk. You can call me. I'm sure Lydia can put my phone number below or something like that. I am running quite a lot of things this year.
That's great.
So I have people would bracket it into a course, but it's not really a course, it's a journey. I'm creating a journey.
I don't expect anything less, Beth.
And that's online. It's called Embodiment of Sound. You can get tickets on Eventbrite. And that's a once a month journey into your own self-wisdom. It's about learning to bring this voice out. It's about everything we've talked about today, actually, learning touch techniques, voice techniques, how to find that voice, how to find your inner wisdom. I'm going to take you on a journey. I'm going to do sound healing. I'm going to do curate with you. I'm going to release people's blocks. We're going to do loads, and it's only once a month. So that's a lovely thing to do. You can find that on my Facebook page as well. Beth Hunt Holistic Therapies. And I'm also running 2 retreats. Yeah, and maybe one with you too.
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to do a sexuality retreat. That would be mega.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So the 2 retreats I'm running are both yoga combined with my friend who does yoga, Kath Slonka, combined with my magic, doing like cacao ceremonies and somatic work and touch and sound healing and all sorts of stuff. One in Snowdonia and one in Greece. And all the information for all of that is, again, on my Facebook page. Definitely will be on my website soon, or you can just contact me. I'd love to hear from any of you about what you've heard today, or book in with me. We can have a proper chat and learn what touch brings you alive.
Yeah. And if you are local in Liverpool, you do sessions in Liverpool, don't you? And also in
the Wirral. Yeah. And the curate I do online, and coaching I do online too. So there's lots of ways to contact me.
It is, which is mega. Also, I can say that Kath is a exceptional yoga teacher. So those retreats are going to be like so nice. I love Kath. She's so nice.
She is.
She's lovely. Thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure. And well done. This is your second ever podcast episode. You smashed it. Well done.
Lots of love to you. Hope to see you the next day.